G'day, mate. Would you like to change your long distance service? When you sign up with AT&T, just yeah, I look like a call center worker walking the streets. So I just surfed over to the forward.com. This is the first time I visited that homepage in months. And what do you know? See that Rob Eshman has returned. So Rob was the longtime editor of the Jewish Journal of Los Angeles. He was the editor there for about 15 years till he retired about 3 or 4 years ago. And for many years I kind of enjoyed sparring with the Jewish Journal of Los Angeles. It seemed to me it was kind of a safe publication, kind of representing the powers that be primarily. So I would get to run into Rob every now and again. And Rob's an extraordinary guy. He's an extraordinary guy. He's highly intelligent, but that's not what I find so extraordinary about him. It's that he's just so good with people. He's so good with people. And I'm not always like so great with people. So I don't know if you're like me in that I've spent like probably most of my life, just ready to go unhinged at any minute. Like to just kind of lose all perspective and to lose a sense of proportion, to lose an accurate sense of my own importance, and to like get overly emotionally attached to one particular point of view, get outraged, and like through all the Sturm and Drang of my blogging about Jewish Los Angeles, which began in 1997. You get to run into people, and you kind of rely on them to be a better person than you are. It's not a good life strategy. But Rob Eshman's one of those blokes that kind of always relied on to be a better man than I am. Like when I'm all peeved about something, or on my soapbox about something, or all over the place emotionally, and like Rob's always like calm. It's a terrible life strategy that I've used, just kind of always hoping that the other person will be the bigger man, not get caught up in the trivia. And so Rob Eshman and the current editor David Sweeser, and these are examples of people that I've long relied on to be the better man than me. Not a good strategy, don't recommend it, but I'm just confessing this, not recommending it. But have you had those opportunities to regularly interact with people who are just better than you are, like finer, kinder, more sane, more successful, more in reality, like more in control of themselves, better able to see the big picture, less likely to get triggered, and someone who'll kind of overlook your shortcomings and give you a sense that they understand you. That's the wonderful thing about people like Rob and David Sweeser, the current editor publisher of the Jewish Journal, is that when you're around these blokes, you get a sense that they understand you more clearly than you understand yourself. So I think Rob dropped out of the journalism game about 4 years ago. I think the bloke's in his 50s. I think he was maybe writing screenplays or something. But he's back. He's back. He just published a column for the forward.com about his life in quarantine. Talks about the other day he went into the garden and was all stuck into the plants and the dirt, and feeling really proud about the success of his garden. Then he started feeling not quite right, so he's been quarantining himself, isolating himself in his room, and he's got a family. So I guess his wife brings him food, and he's on a special, recommends a special COVID diet. It's just basically pancakes and matzah and you may ask, are there special healing properties in pancakes and matzah? The answer is no, there are not, but it's the only food that his wife can slip under the door to get to Rob. So he's quarantining himself, he's isolating himself, he's putting on his journalism shoes, so to speak, and he's going to be what's called the national editor of the Forward. So I think he's going to have a focus on South Florida, very diverse Jewish community there. Los Angeles, another diverse Jewish community. Maybe San Francisco, Chicago, because so many Jewish weeklies have gone the way of other publications having to shut down or pay staff. Okay, these are not good days for pornographers and journalists, right? The business model is broken for traditional journalism. So, welcome back, Rob. And seems to me, Rob, that the game has changed from blogging to vlogging. So I started blogging in '97. I think it became a word in something like 2000. And it often kind of crossed swords with the coverage at the Jewish Journal of Los Angeles. They were the more responsible, staid publication. And I was always trying to get out there and break stories, not always accurately or fairly or in context. Might have overdone it a few times with some of my comments about various Jewish journal personalities. May not have been fully appropriate. May have gone a little too far. But Rob was a rock, man. He's one of those people I relied on to be a better man than myself. So he's a gorgeous writer. And Jewish life is like, there's a lot of competitiveness and a lot of passion. And people have a lot of opinions. And Rob has this ability that he can move fairly easily through all the different parts of Jewish life. From the Orthodox to the Hasidic to the LGBTQ community. He's a man of the left, definitely, but about as open a conversation as you could ever hope for. Someone who just puts you at ease when you talk to him, able to listen to different points of view, does not tend to be defensive, doesn't attack people, not a screamer. If I recall, he didn't even have his assistant fetch him coffee. If I recall correctly, he would get his own tea and get his own coffee at the Jewish Journal. So I think pretty much everyone who worked for him had a lot of praise for him. And he, on the other hand, he was careful and protective of his employees. He didn't trash them, even when sometimes they would have deserved it. So I'll be interested to see what he does at the Forward. It's a good article in the Forward, March 20th, about how Jews are a particular risk for COVID because they tend to have more intimate relationships than other people. According to this one survey, that while the average person in America has fewer than 2 people to whom they can share intimate stuff, that the average Jew has about 4. And this is from secular, Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox Jews. Like Jews tend to lead, highly social lives. It's not just at synagogue, but we love to schmooze. We love to break bread with people. We love to shake hands. We love to hug. We're physically demonstrative. Jews are very emotionally warm people, very social people. Schmoozing, there's something quite like it. I think Frame Game Radio did a thread on this. There's schmooze that begins with kind of you sit someone down and you may share a little bit of vulnerability, not too much, just a little bit to kind of lubricate the conversation, and then both sides start off with sharing perhaps some vulnerability, and then just move on. And it's this gift that many Jews have, just making you feel like part of the family. So, in comparison to Northern European and Anglo-Saxon cultures, I think Jewish culture is much more collectivist. So all the prayers in Judaism are for the people, Israel. Almost no prayers in the first person singular. You don't pray for me, myself, my individual salvation. It's much more of the Protestant thing. So Protestantism is about the individual, his individual walk with Jesus, his individual encounter with God through his just picking up the sacred text and opening it and asking God to come into his heart. And while the Jewish and Roman Catholic traditions much more about you consult the tradition. What does the tradition have to say about the text that you're reading? Also, certainly compared to Anglo-Saxons, Orthodox Jews in particular have very high uncertainty avoidance. So that means it creates a culture where you want to have a lot of laws so that you can legislate as much of life as possible, specifically as possible. You're careful about who you let into the community because you don't want to be caught up with the uncertainty when you bring like strangers in. So probably for every 100 people who try to convert to Orthodox Judaism, about one person will usually make it through. Because like Germans and Austrians, Jews have high uncertainty avoidance. I remember Dennis Prager talked about he brought two Christian friends to, I think, an Orthodox synagogue service. And after about 45 minutes, one of them turned to him and said, "When do services begin?" A joke is they've been going on the whole time, but they're much more informal. If we would go to synagogue together, we might just sit around out back and drink tea or coffee, nosh, have some kugel, various rooms. People will be davening, praying, or reading from the Torah. We may wander in and out of these rooms. We may sit there and some of the people are praying, and probably just as many people, if not more, are schmoozing. So, Beit Knesset, that's the Hebrew word for synagogue. It doesn't mean house of prayer. It means house of meeting. So that's how Jews relate to their synagogue. It's a house of meeting. It's not the transcendent, otherworldly experience that church is, but it's where you gather. So probably 10 times as many Jews who go to synagogue to talk to their fellow Jews, as opposed to a relatively small number of Jews who go to synagogue primarily to talk to God. So very challenging times right now in Judaism because we can't gather. Life is with the people is a very Jewish attitude. Something that I love about my conversion to Judaism is the tightness, the bonding, the gathering with community. So much easier to walk a mile with someone else than to walk a mile on your own, I find. So I'm excited to see what Rob Eshman's going to do as national editor of The Forward. And these are really exciting times for male journalists and pundit in particular. So I think, Eshman's getting on in his 50s. He's got a long life of accomplishment. So you could say he's in his king stage, sitting on his throne. So where is he going to go from here? Because a pundit, it's a male pundit. Like, this is why men take it seriously when you ask their opinion, because they bring two things most valuable, most dear to them to the table when you ask them their opinion on what's going on. They bring their most deeply held values, what they believe is right and wrong, and that shapes their opinions, their values, what they stand for. Right? Now, every man is prepared to kill or to sacrifice his life for others. Now that's kind of what it means to be a man. You're ready under some circumstances to kill if necessary, and under other circumstances you're willing to sacrifice your life for your family or for your community. So when you're a pundit, a journalist, or an editor, after a lifetime of accomplishment like Eshman, so you bring your values, the way that you see the world, what you regard as right and wrong. Then you also bring something else that's precious, that men, particularly in public life, journalists, hold dear, and that is, what are the accurate sources of information? So we're in a period of tremendous uncertainty right now. We have no idea who's right, who's wrong in their predictions, their understandings of COVID-19. So particularly as a man who wants to understand the world, wants to contribute to the world by shedding light, shedding clarity, providing useful information. Like, what sources of information do we turn to make sense of this uncertain time? Right, there's been nothing like this, and so there are opinions all over the map. There are projections all over the map. So kind of what it means to be a man who publicly shares his views on public policy. What it means right now is you don't just come with your values, with your understanding of right and wrong, but you come with what you believe to be the best sources of information. So, New York Times, that's one of my favorite sources of information. Wall Street Journal. And so I'm sure Rob Eshman respects those sources as well. He's got a very wide network in Jewish journalism, among Jewish philanthropists, Jews in the entertainment industry, Jews in academia, in the legal profession. He's long had access to a lot of elite Jews, so I'm sure he'll be tapping that expertise. I'm sure he knows a lot of Jewish doctors. His wife is a rabbi. So he also has some knowledge of the Jewish tradition, the Masorah, sacred texts, the Torah, Talmud, and the ongoing rabbinic commentaries. His wife has even more knowledge, I would expect. So he's got a vast swath of information that he can turn to make sense of these times. So I'll be curious to see what he comes up with. I mean, these are dark times, difficult times. Maybe we're heading for 30% unemployment, but incredibly exciting times for a man who loves to try to make sense of the world, who wants to shed light, wants to make the world a better place through providing clear reporting and useful exposition about what's going on right now. So I will be reading theforward.com, reading Rob Eshman's commentaries there. I'll be excited to see the job he does as national editor. I wonder why he's come back to journalism. Did the world of writing screenplays pall for him? Does he have to support a gambling habit? Is he finding himself? Does he miss being in the mix? It's one of the alluring things about being a journalist is you're right in the mix. You're right in the middle of what's going on. Okay, g'day Rob. Looking forward to seeing what you do, mate.